Kawhi Leonard is obviously one of the best players in the NBA. Honestly, if I were building a team today and you promised me no one would get hurt, he'd be my #1 pick. We love him so much because he takes both sides of the ball very serious, both on offense and especially on defense. And his misunderstood, almost mysterious personality makes him even more of a gem. Dude don't even got a social media. I mean, he's just special. And recently, to no one's surprise, Colin Cowherd said some crazy stuff. He came out and said this.
And I have said, if Kawhi Leonard in 2.5, 3 months is holding up a trophy, is holding up the championship trophy, he's a top 10 player in the league all time.
Now, it was countered by Nick Wright, who's, an infamous LeBron vacuum, who responded with this.
Do you know where Kawhi Leonard ranks in NBA history in points? I'll answer it for you. You don't, because no one does, because the rankings only go through 250, and he ain't in the top 250, Colin. I got 3 names for you. Wesley Matthews, Marvin Williams, and Jeff Teague. Those 3 all-time greats have all scored more points in their career than Kawhi.
I recently put out a poll basically asking everybody who's higher all time, KD or Kawhi. And really to my surprise, KD was the overwhelming favorite. Now I understand it, but I thought everybody hated KD, so I was surprised by that. And this brought me directly to this video. How great is Kawhi historically? Where does he rank all time? And what would another championship do for his legacy?
If he wants me to say that, it's kind of personal. It's personal.
When Kawhi got drafted out of San Diego State, he wasn't drafted to be the Kawhi Leonard we know now. In his pre-draft scouting report, almost by everybody, they basically described an athletic, lengthy defensive monster with very limited offensive capabilities. They really couldn't precisely name one skill on offense, and that's why his development has been so impressive. They even said, quote, he doesn't have one aspect offensively that would allow him to consistently score the ball. Now that's laughable now because we know this man's bag is Michael Jordan-like. Now, Kawhi was drafted into honestly like the most perfect position for a young raw prospect. San Antonio already had their core, so they didn't really expect much from Kawhi. He wasn't drafted to be this savior or this offensive machine. He didn't have many ball handling assignments. He wasn't asked to create plays, and they basically let him thrive at what he was already good at. Playing off the ball with not that many tasks, that really suited Kawhi early, and thanks to his shooting coach, Chip England, he developed a pretty deadly 3-point shot. Now, this is what took his career to a whole new level. Also for San Antonio, they had another deadly weapon to keep defenders honest against their pass-happy, ball-friendly offense, so that helped them out as well. Something I don't even think people realize about Kawhi is exactly how good of a deep shooter he is, especially when it matters most. Look at this man's 3-point splits throughout his entire postseason career. He's barely shot under 40%. And last year, he shot way more because he had way more responsibility with Toronto, and he still shot pretty great. Another massive improvement that people don't really appreciate about Kawhi, when someone brings up a flaw about Kawhi's game, what's the first thing they bring up? Oh, he don't know how to pass. Oh, he barely gets assists. Etc., etc. Like, that's what they bring up. And when you really look at it over the past few years, you can really debunk that argument. As I said earlier, early in Kawhi's career, he was put in a very rigid system that never really allowed players to average high assists. I think Tony Parker is a pretty good playmaker. The highest assist he ever averaged was 7, and for his career, he averaged 5. That's just not really how Pop coached. If you put Tony Parker in Mike D'Antoni's system where Steve Nash, James Harden, all these players thrive with assists, I guarantee you Parker would have had way more double-digit assist years and all that, but he just didn't play with that. Now, bringing it back to Kawhi, I want y'all to look at this stat that really just shows his improvement. Last year, Kawhi finally broke out that Pop system, so he was the primary source of offense for Toronto. He got all the double teams, all the traps, all the attention, etc., etc. His last full season in San Antonio, he handled the ball 25% of the times on pick and roll possessions. That's basically creating and passing and stuff like that. Last year, with the star point guard averaging 9 assists per game, Kyle Lowry, he handled it 27% of the time. This year, with multiple players who can handle the ball and create offense and all that stuff, it's up to 33%. Now, why am I saying all this? He's never going to be that LeBron quarterback, point forward type of player. Like, that's just not who he is. It's not in his DNA. But if you look at Kevin Durant last year, he only handled the ball 19% of times on pick and roll possessions. He was able to work off the ball and get good looks, clean looks. LeBron this year is only averaging 27%. So Kawhi is creating offense and people don't even care about that. I'm not saying Kawhi is a better passer or a better offensive creator or floor general than LeBron, because we all know he's not. But this year, he has a higher usage rate than LeBron. He has the ball in his hands more than LeBron, so he can run a pretty efficient offense. Now on to the negatives about Kawhi Leonard's career.
Do you know where Kawhi Leonard ranks in NBA history in points? I'll answer it for you. You don't, because no one does, because the rankings only go through 250, and he ain't in the top 250, Colin.
As Nick Wright just pointed out, Kawhi's career is never going to be measured by numbers, like ever. When you look at most of the top 10, top 20 players on an all-time list, they're typically up there in all-time stats, basically because they play consistently. Kawhi, I mean, he obviously hasn't, and let's be honest, the mixture of Kawhi playing with Pop, who basically started the whole load management thing for his stars and all that, and the fact that he's a bit injury prone, it was just a bad blend. His career just wasn't built for total numbers. He only has 9,000 career points in 9 years, and that's nowhere near what you would expect for somebody of his talent. Just for comparisons, if you look at Kemba Walker, who was drafted in the exact same draft class, he has about 3,500 more points, and he's at least in the 200s all time with scoring, and he's like half of Kawhi's talent. So yeah, Kawhi isn't going to be celebrated for his incredible durability or his incredible consistent production, because that's just not who he was. But even with that, and even with the short resume of Kawhi, I would still rank him as a top 30 player all time just on his on-court effectiveness alone. I look at it like this. Russell Westbrook is going to demolish Kawhi in literally every major stat category when they both retire. Every single one. He's going to demolish Kawhi. Even with that, if Kawhi wins another championship, whose resume is going to be more impressive? I think we can all say Kawhi. If you watch the NFL or you know anything about football, it's kind of like this. Tony Romo on the surface, he has way better numbers than Joe Montana all time. In fact, Joe Montana's best year didn't even touch last year's MVP, aka my quarterback Lamar Jackson. But if you look at it all time, Joe Montana is obviously the greater quarterback because he has 4 rings and he performed when it mattered. That's kind of how Kawhi is. And please stop with the narrative that Kawhi didn't deserve his first finals MVP, because it's so laughably false to me. In that finals, the series went 5 games. San Antonio won 4-1, right? In those first 2 games, Kawhi had 9 points, and the series was split 1 game apiece. So we get that part. The next 3 games where they dominated Miami, Kawhi averaged 24, 9, 2, and 2 on crazy, and I mean crazy shooting splits. Oh, and he guarded the best player in the world at 22. How did he not deserve finals MVP? I never got that. If he shouldn't have won MVP, who the hell should have won it? And last year, the man averaged 30 in the playoffs and put together, to me, one of the best playoff runs in the 2010s. So, give the man his props. He's not going to be James Harden, Russell Westbrook, all NBA teams, MVPs, All-Stars, all that stuff. His is going to be, what the hell did I do when it mattered most? And that's really his legacy. I know it's controversial to say this, but to me, if he wins a 3rd title in a 3rd location, mind you, he will be given 2 different locations their first titles. And if he wins this finals MVP with the Clippers, he's a top 15 player of all time. And we can just debate that. If you guys like this video, make sure you guys leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I really want to hear what you guys have to say about Kawhi's legacy. What would this mean for his legacy and all that? Make sure you guys follow my Twitter, my IG, add me on Snap. Do all that great stuff, guys. And until next time, I got a video dropping for y'all tomorrow as well. All that great stuff, guys. Follow my social media, all that great stuff. And until next time, as always, stay tuned.